I still, you might have a better answer than this than me. I still don't know what happened to T Higgins last year. Like T Higgins came out in game one and had 8 targets, 0 catches, 0 yards. And that was kind of his season. Like that, he had like 2 big 200-yard games. He never became a factor. What did you see at T Higgins? Because I think that was a key point too. In that, was it just all, the offense and the offensive line and Burrow not being able to move? T Higgins, he was a guy who was going back to fantasy. He's a guy I was drafted late second round a lot of times last year, early third. And he was just a non-factor. What did you see? You've looked at his game. What happened to T Higgins last year?
Yeah, Higgins, I think, had his worst year as a pro last year, just from an individual standpoint. Looking at reception perception, lowest success rate versus man, lowest success rate versus zone, lowest success rate versus press of his 3-year career. And like in a couple of those categories, it wasn't even close. I do think he played a lot of the season injured. Maybe not to start. It's one of those things where, his quarterback's not healthy. That didn't help him in week 1. And then as his quarterback gets healthy, he's dealing with injuries, and then he's playing with a backup, and he's also got injuries in the back half. So I think it was just sort of like talk about a Jenga piece season for him. You start pulling one thing and another thing goes wrong. That whole situation with T Higgins, I think that's the biggest part of it. I also think Higgins is a good receiver. I do think he's gotten a touch like overrated because of these. Both of these guys are so good. Like, I think T Higgins probably could be a number 1 on another team, but I don't know if I feel like locked in for sure about that. I think he's like, is he a top 15 receiver? Definitely maybe top 20, but I think he's a little bit, it's unfair to talk about him right now just because this is the worst season of his career that he's coming off of. But again, I think I'm sort of, after 4 years in the NFL, that's sort of where I stand with Higgins as a player. Like, I don't think they've got like 2 alpha receivers, basically. I think they have an elite number 1 in Jamar Chase, who just offers so much more. And then they have a guy in T Higgins who, even when he's healthy, like, he's a good separator, but not a great separator, and sort of invites those like high degree of difficulty targets. And that's how you get like a 8 target, 0 catch performance with a quarterback who's not healthy. So again, a lot of different factors there for T, but that's sort of just where like state of the state with him at this point.
Yeah, he's basically going to become Alvin Harper with whoever he signs with next year. That's an old school reference for you senior citizens out there who remember Alvin Harper signing with the Buccaneers. I just think that the exercise here is to show that just small things can add up very quickly in the NFL because the margins are so small. We all love the Bengals going into last year. And then T Higgins, he falls off a little bit. Joe Burrow starts slow. The defense takes a little bit of a step back without those safeties especially. And all of a sudden it just crumbles. And that can happen. It can definitely happen to teams. And you even look at this year, T Higgins. I mean, if there was any part of his drop off last year that had to do with his unhappiness with his contract, well, that hasn't been resolved. He's still on a franchise tag, and guys, look, people are human beings here, and we've seen it with Ayuk, we've seen it with other guys. If you're not happy with your contract, it's on your mind a lot, and maybe that I'm not saying it has or hasn't happened with Higgins. He really hasn't said much about it at all, but it's a possibility, something we have to factor in. And then even with Burrow, okay, he's coming off wrist surgery. He's going to be there for week 1, but just because he's there week 1 does not necessarily mean he's 100%. This is a wrist injury that even Joe Burrow said. I researched this and I could not find another quarterback that's ever dealt with this. It sounds like a very serious wrist injury. I hope Joe Burrow's back at full strength, but to use the well-worn cliche of the baseball pitcher, if Joe Burrow goes from a 97 mile an hour fastball pitcher to 95, 94, the margins again in the NFL are pretty slim. And then he goes from a great quarterback to maybe a good quarterback. Look, again, a lot of things could just add up really, really quickly for any NFL team that we have high hopes for going into the season.
Especially because I think what I learned about the Bengals last year after Joe Burrow was out for the season is just how much that offense, and maybe this is obvious, but just how much of that offense is Joe Burrow dictated. Because when Browning's in there, they're getting under center. Their run game and their pass game makes a little bit more sense together. They're doing more play action. They're using a lot more motion. Whereas with Burrow, he kind of wants to be in the gun, be in empty, spread things out, and do the Aaron Rodgers, the Peyton Manning, that type of stuff. He's much more of an old school quarterback than some of these other guys. And I'm very fascinated to see, as you point out, what's a pivotal offseason for him from a health perspective. I want to see if they can mold those two things together. use some of the Browning concepts with Joe Burrow, because I think that would make Joe Burrow's life easier. And actually, if he is, losing a little bit of that fastball, and again, it's an if he's losing a little bit of that fastball, if he's maybe not 100% healthy, take a little bit of that burden off of his shoulders by doing some of those quarterback cheat code type things. That's how you get a good season or a good little stretch out of Jake Browning. You do stay viable. But does Joe Burrow want to do that? I don't know. That's going to be the fascinating thing about this year's Bengals. And I think we've set a good table here of kind of what to expect out of these teams. So